fun. This is the session on design. Standout holiday lighting installations. And we'll get going. My name's Matthew Larson. Hopefully you can see me. I've been doing Christmas lighting for quite a while, except I'm not an installer. I've been a trainer primarily in content designer as we go through this, but I've learned a lot and have some insights to share. I've probably talked to a lot of you anyway, and I always enjoy getting input from contractors using the product. And I'm sure we have some distributors as well who have to handle the product, and you're always very helpful to us too. When we're talking about designing, we're really talking about the use of the product and the application of it and choices that are made in the field. So I went ahead and took some pictures off of various contractor websites who are attending this conference. Some of these could have been your installations. Thought I'd just showcase a few things that have been done. This is 2022 highlights in design. We saw a lot of really crisp lines being used, a lot of white being used. I love that bottom right drone shot because I think drones really show architecture well. So I guess the point is, make sure you take pictures of your style and your aesthetic and showcase that on your website and social media. It really helps to showcase what you're doing in the field and your design work. You're the pro and you get to represent that. Other things is I like the C9 roof lines with color. We saw more of that last year too, which is nice. And you'll see more and more the use of landscape lighting color like this one here on the top. What's trending? This is more like trending in design generally. I think we're all seeing it. It's a lot of this color that's used, especially in landscape lighting. So we've got various manufacturers now that have color changing landscape lights. And if you're in the landscape industry, you know who they are. They're FX and these Halo companies. Smart controllers, you know, you can change your landscape to look like anything. So that giant mansion on the bottom, you know, they're washing color through the landscape, which is a rather exciting effect, but it does change what you would do as a designer of the holiday lighting itself to use that and play off of it. In the hardscape, we see it too. So under counter lighting and this strip lighting that's really fine and can be tucked anywhere can change colors now. So there's lots of ways to introduce color into the holiday lighting if you're doing design with those kinds of effects in place. I guess you really got to see the installation at night to really understand what they've got going. So architectural lighting like under counter and hardscape lighting, programmable RGB strands, you see the twinkly being used more. And then of course, permanent roofline lighting, we're seeing that's in the bottom left of your screen. Where there's permanent roofline lighting, there's always a seasonal application. So design work is still important with greenery, with shrub lighting, with accessories, with path light lighting. There are ways to go in and dress things up for the holidays. If I was a betting man, and I'm really not, but if I was to guess based on all of that input, I would bet that 2023 is going to be a year of color. And I think that's something important to make sure your customers know and offer really colorful solutions. There's just so many ways to play off of color, especially in trees like is shown here, but also in architectural lighting and path lighting. And you can add, some of the best contractors even buy our unlit greenery and they put color into the greenery. It doesn't always have to be just whites, although that's the basis for good design. Color's a really rather important effect. So let's call 2023 the year of color. To begin with, I want to just talk about kind of a new theory and design, and that's aesthetic. And I think a lot of us who work in the landscape industry or, you know, with shovels and things, we don't understand this necessarily, but my wife actually works in the aesthetics industry. And I'm always surprised at how much money people spend on aesthetics. Aesthetics meaning their own personal aesthetic, their body, their face, but also aesthetics in interior and exterior design and just beauty. So I prefer that we consider ourselves in holiday lighting actually an aesthetics business. So we're drawing on senses to provide pleasure to a consumer. And they gladly are willing to pay a premium for that because it isn't just a standard offering. It's not just commoditized products. You're providing something that indulges their visual in this case. So we need to make sure that our aesthetics business, in this case, a design business, is not just lasting, but it offers value to the customer and loyalty for the customer because you're shifting that motivation from a functional, maybe it's a landscape or a service that you provide to something that's really memorable. And isn't that the job of a holiday lighting decorator, to create something that's really sensational, not just for the people who drive by the house during the holidays, the neighbors, but for those who are paying for the service. So my message today is to know your aesthetic, and I'll wrap it up at the end, but know your aesthetic, know your service well, offer the beauty and the sensation that your customers are relying on you to provide, and you will have repeat customers. You will design with a style that is your own, and you'll be able to compete with those who don't have and don't know their own aesthetic. What we're going to talk about today in more tactical ways are 3 elements of design. And some of you may have heard this before. We've been teaching on these principles for quite a long time. We've gone through and built some more content around this for you, and you can use it in your own training internally, or if you're a distributor, you can use this with your contractors. Things to look for, and we're going to focus on 3 things: color, focal point, and architecture. And we look for these things to create interest. So either in the landscape through trees and walkways and features that are visible from the curb. These landscape interests create depth. So it's not just a one-dimensional kind of flat installation or design. It has dimension, and it pulls people into the design and into your intent, into your aesthetic. There are also architectural interests. So the location of the building on the lot, the finishes, the interests in the roof line. A good tip would be to see the building at night, like I said, with all these new landscape lighting features that can wash color into it. See that building at night if possible, to know how to use those features and that color in your own design. There's also a really wise tip, and there's a video that I'll show that highlights this, but there are usually features from the inside of the house or from the porch or somewhere where the homeowner stands that can be of interest to them and can create a moment for them. Most of the time, the homeowner doesn't spend their time on the curb looking at their house. They're inside. So look from their vantage point to find interests, find things that will create a sensation for them. And that will go a long way in your design, in your proposal for them. Hold on, oh, here it goes. It's queuing up.
This is another seasonal source pro tip. We find that often in our design work, in bidding and estimating, we focus a lot of attention on the houses, trees, and there's some greenery, but often we neglect the ability to outline some unique characteristics in the forefront of the yards. For example, in this, we have a nice entry pathway going up to the front door that if we were to light this up, as you see in this example here, it creates not only a wonderful entry for guests coming and leaving a party at this house during the holidays, but it adds a lot of depth to the overall look of the lighting design here. These stake lights are a wonderful example of a way to add just a good spacing, a nice exact outline. It can be used not only along the pathway like this, but along any kind of decorative curbing along flower beds as well. A wonderful way to add a unique look that's going to also set you apart from your competitors who are not using this kind of design work in their bidding and estimating process. This has been another Seasonal Source Pro Tip.
So there you go, a little pro tip about creating depth with a product like stake lights. Here's another one that I wanted to show you. Okay, thank you for indulging me on those products. You can see that, if you know about accessories like those, like spheres or stakes, there are ways that you can work them into the design, and you can create depth and a little bit more interest than just the traditional architectural lighting, landscape lighting, and really create a design that sets you apart and sets the installation apart from the neighbors. Okay, color. So if I was to ask you guys, and you can take yourselves off mute, but and chime in here, color is something that a lot of people struggle with, because there is a design technique that's a little bit more traditional, that color isn't a favorite always with every homeowner, and they don't necessarily know the drama that color can create, especially when it's used properly. My wife would tend to say, make it white, warm white. That's traditional, that's classy, that's simple and clean. If I were to prove it to her that creating, solid colored trees in color would create a more dramatic effect than just washing it in white, I think I could prove my point. You don't always have that opportunity, so it's important to have photography that shows it. A lot of homeowners may have color preferences, and I think you can work with them, but the key to using color, especially in trees, even on the roof line, is to use consistency. So don't pop color out into the landscape that just doesn't match or is isolated on its own. Design with like trees, like sizes, in similar colors to create contrast, and use odd numbers. Kind of an old design technique is just to use odd numbers, use groups of 3, and play with color and those groups to create the depth that we were talking about, especially when it comes to the landscape. There's lots of good examples of color that we'll go through in a little bit. The next design element is focal point. Really important when you're doing design work. And if you're the one out doing the designs and quoting the jobs and proposing solutions for people, you got to kind of be familiar with the installation, with the landscape and with the home, and find those interests that you can use as a focal point. Typically, it's going to be the door, right? You're trying to draw people into the home, and so that would be your most well lit area. And a lot of times we create those focal points with things like garland around the doors and wreaths and things, or lights over an archway. You're looking for drama, and you're looking for centeredness, and you're looking for a place to lead the eye. And it's not always easy to find the focal point, but you can create it using lights. You can really create a focal point easily with lights. You just have to find the best focal point. Sometimes it could be a tree that's just really beautiful and dramatic, and you want the person driving by or the neighbor to really focus on that tree. There are other accessories that we looked at spheres, but there's other accessories that are distractions. So it may not be your design aesthetic to work in, the giant blow up Santa Claus that the homeowner wants in that installation. That may be a distraction from the focal point that your aesthetic and your style of your design is pointing to. So you can work in a theme and animation, but just remember you're the professional, and it's your reputation and it's your portfolio, really. So you don't have to take the job, really, if you can't, agree on a focal point or do something that is really your design. So be the pro and give the advice as the design professional, and pick a focal point that'll really, really enhance the project. And we'll show some focal points in just a minute too. I have a short video here about the backyard.
This is another seasonal source pro tip. Oftentimes, we focus all of our attention on marketing the lighting to the front of the house, but in reality, the customers, they come home at night, see their lights for a brief glimpse, pull into the garage. The rest of the time, they're inside their house. What opportunity lies for us is that most of these homes that we decorate have a fantastic backyard, and the homes are designed so there's a view out the back, out a kitchen window or a family room that takes in that view of the backyard. This particular house has a wonderful example for the pine trees that are a wonderful focal point that you could decorate, as well as on this side, the arborvitae along the fence line that could be lit up. What this does, it opens up a wonderful opportunity you as a pro to not only sell more product, more installation, but give more benefit to the clients. They might be entertaining, they might have other things going on during the holidays, and something that they want to enjoy while they're home, seeing out those beautiful view windows, and see something that they can focus on and enjoy during the holidays, and not just have the front decorated where just the neighbors see it. This has been another seasonal source pro tip.
I love that pro tip. It's one that we came across some time ago, and the best designers and the best contractors really utilize that. They really understand the space and work through with their clients those meaningful moments in the landscape, and they bring them inside, they bring them to their view, and it can be very impactful. And since the clientele is high end, and the budget isn't necessarily the biggest concern with most of these clients that you have, if you can make recommendations and show that the power of the backyard, they've put a lot of money into their pools and their decks and their landscape, the tree selection and the position of those things. Highlighting those can be really meaningful. Okay, the last design element, and then we'll go into some application, is architecture. So we generally light the architecture of the home or building on the roof line, and that's just the standard. Those peaks and dormers and eyebrow windows and all those little things can really enhance the architecture and make it pop. Our base for architecture is generally white bulbs, but as you can see, you can use a splash of color up there too. It's a great way to spread power across the installation. So it's kind of the first thing you focus on is the architecture. Put those C7 or C9 bulbs up on the roof line and in the right places, so that from the areas that people can see, the roof line is lit. And we see a lot of even ridge lines in Texas. People light all the way up over the top. In Oklahoma, they do it too. They really focus on the architecture of the roof line, which is great. But windows, doorways, arches, those peaks that are, not necessarily on the outline of the roof, can also be really dramatic highlights of architecture. So you can use all of those. There's nothing that's off limits. And I'm going to show a picture of one that it's used for Halloween, but it is it's really cool the way you can play with architecture if you just are willing to be creative. You can also use wreaths and garland to really enhance architecture. We sell garland that's in very long lengths. You can get it 100 feet, so you can spread it up over a very high archway. It doesn't have to be just doorways. You can really create some architectural wonder by using the right products. And you're looking for drama. I like to think when I'm doing this work, I like to think, what did the architect, the actual architect that designed the building, what did they have in mind? What were the interests that they were creating when they designed the elevation of that house or that building? And it's our opportunity then to highlight those things in lights. All right, the rest of this time, and we're probably going to get sucked out a little early from this session because Jeff went over. We're going to look at it's a new resource. It's called the Lookbook. And you can download this and you go ahead and do it right now if you'd like, and you can follow along. This is available at seasonalsource.com/resources. It is a lookbook that shows lots of photography. It has a look at installations. It classifies them by the look of the job. And then it shows the product that is used on the installation. I think this is a really powerful tool for a contractor to sit down with a homeowner and really define the look of the installation and help them understand the aesthetic and what you're trying to achieve, especially if they have their own ideas. You can kind of steer them with this lookbook. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the lookbook. There's 4 or 5 different centerfolds that the lookbook holds. And we're going to talk through architecture, color, and focal point for each. And then we'll actually look at the lookbook picture of the products that are also used in the lookbook. So, and feel free to interrupt. This is my interpretation of architecture, color, and focal point for each of them. But if you have other ideas or think of something else, feel free to chime in or correct me. When I look at this is a traditional looking house, right? Not a lot of color. You've got your traditional architectural lighting on the roof line. You have the use of whites primarily in the trees. This is more of a classic holiday lighting installation. Wreaths on the windows and under the eave. Very traditional, very professional, very clean. It's a great installation. Color is not used a lot, but you can see subtle color used in the bows that were selected. So they put bows on their wreaths, so that's the red. And then there's actually rope light used up around the arch, which is great. It creates the focal point. It draws you into the doorway. But you can see a little red strand of a rope light used there, which adds color. So you've got your basic green in your landscape and in your greenery used on the doorway and in the wreaths, red and white, very, very traditional color. Let's look at the lookbook breakdown of this. And this is where the power of the lookbook is for you when you're talking to customers or working with, if you're at the counter of a distributor and you're working with a contractor on what they're trying to accomplish. This is the lookbook for a traditional. So when we're thinking traditional, this pretty much wraps it up. You've got if you follow the guide, you've got A, B, C, D, all the way to H, what's being used. Sun warm white LED C9 on the roof line. Got the light stakes out in the landscape to create the depth, which is great. You've got sun warm white 5mm on strands on the tree and all the trees, they're all C. Several different colors of wreaths. The bows were really important in this to create that traditional look. And that's pretty much the contents of it. So you can kind of get a feel for the product that's being used in this look. Any comments or things you change? Or you can raise your hand or write comments, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, we're just warming up. So let's go to the next look in the lookbook. This one is called Winter Wonderland, and I highlighted the the three areas of design on it. So you can see we're using color now. And on this, because it's a winter wonderland theme, you've got cool colors. So you've got that teal and purple. That's a cool tone. It's not as cool as the next one, which is like actual has a cool roof line, but you've got kind of the wintry feel and it'll look great in a winter setting. We've got a focal point as the doorway. You've got high drama in the arch. You've got a wreath overhead and greenery around the doorway. So it really leads you into the middle of the home. And then of course the architecture is highlighted on the roof line. There's not a lot of other architecture, it's not a huge installation. If we go to the lookbook for this particular one, up in the top corner, you can see there's some variation to it even. They've got a little color splash that they added up into the very peak, which is kind of cute. You know, you can throw in a little red and green so it looks like a little holly up into just the peaks, because this one has 3 peaks that are very similar and on the same line. That would look pretty good. We've got sun warm white LED bulbs on the roof line, several wreaths of various sizes, got the garland. This one uses net lights on those shrubs. So it's got a really even placement of lights across the shrubs. You don't always get that when you're trying to light it yourself. Sometimes you can see more of the lines of the lights if you're not using a net that disperses it. Sun warm white and orange. Orange isn't used very often, but it works because this is so multicolored in the landscape. And then we have the ground stakes and warm white on there. Overall, a very wintry looking aesthetic. And I think it's totally acceptable because you've got the warm white kind of pulling it all together because the color isn't too far away, but there's not a lot of light colors being used, which is different. Usually you'd cluster colors like, so I see purple, teal, pink, orange, lots of different colors and not necessarily the same or a grouping of colors. There's also a tree up in the foreground that you can see that's not lit, which would have brought more depth to it, but it may, from the center of the building, it may be blocking the doorway. So there may have been some intention to that. Any other comments on this winter wonderland? Jody, you know you're dying to say something about this. No? Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. Hopefully you're following along in your own lookbook if you downloaded it. This one's called Cool Winter. I mentioned this one because they've switched. Same house as before, but they've switched to a cool tone on the architecture. So I like the use of the cool whites. Not everyone is interested in that aesthetic, but it's very cool. And it works very well with the teals and the purple. So focal point, I identified the focal point as the center. It doesn't draw you into the door the same way as the last version of this home, but that very bright snowflake that's bright white, that pure white snowflake in the middle of the arch is the focal point to me. And then it's kind of framed by all the architecture. There's a lot of architecture and it's very balanced. They threw in little icicles on the corner, which are cool. You can see little dropping icicle bulbs. Those are actually just, they screw into the C7 or C9 socket just as little icicle bulbs. Gives a little detail to it and definitely the cool look. And then the very good use of color to play with the warm white. The cool tones always work best with the cool white that you wouldn't want to necessarily use with warm white. A design tip that, you know, you see it sometimes more in amateur design, but you would never mix warm white, sun warm white, a warm roof line lighting, C9 or C7, with a cool. Those two kind of contradict each other. But I have seen it. Okay, looking at the lookbook for this. you can see that it does have a bit of a bluish tone to it, even a purple tone to it, and primarily because of the purple net lights. But you've got your C9 pure white on the roof line for architecture. That snowflake motif isn't always a common thing that people know about or gravitate toward, but those are the kind of accessories that we have in our catalog. So feel free to, find the right placement for those kinds of things. It doesn't always have to be a wreath there. Sometimes it can be a snowflake that fills that spot. 36-inch snowflake is a great application if someone wants this cool winter effect. And then we've got the teal purple and the light stakes on this one. They've changed them to a color. And I can't tell, except it looks like maybe it's a pink or a purple color, probably a pink color along the base of it. Yeah, this one shows it a little bit better. So it doesn't always have to be whites on the ground either. It can be green to go with the lawn, or it can be, in this case, a pink color. Okay, continuing on with our lookbook, we've got two more. This is back to that traditional, we saw it in traditional last time. This time we're going to call it candy cane. Last time the traditional had, if you remember, a warm white for the architectural lighting on the roof line. Now we've gone color, which also shows the architecture. And because it's candy cane, it's got more color. You know, those candy canes that have green in them. That's, I think, the kind of candy cane we're talking about here. Same focal point, same application. And then we're using color on these. And actually you can see the color really does help this. If you're moving away from the traditional whites, it actually enhances the installation quite a bit. So I like the use of color and a very traditional color palette. Reds and greens and whites, the traditional colors are 80% of what we sell and what you would expect to use in installations. Those purples and pinks and blues, way less common, just because they're not traditional. This home has a really good focal point. You're definitely drawn into where the lighting is on it. And then I do appreciate the lights on the ground. I think besides being sometimes a maintenance challenge, if you're recommending those lights to someone who has, in a climate where there's ongoing lawn maintenance during the winter or children kicking balls, it could be a problem for you. But if it's something that's going to sit pretty still and you're not expecting a lot of trimming and things going on, if the lawn's dormant, it can be really beautiful. And it doesn't need to necessarily be around a lawn like that. Walkways that don't have a maintenance path can be really dramatic too. So just a heads up, if you're using the stake lights, they break if someone runs them over or kicks a ball or a lawnmower chews them up. You don't necessarily need to use them to just get a call back. All right, let's look at this one through the lookbook. This one's called Candy Cane, and I won't read all this to you. You know it's being used. It's the same C9. We've got the colors this time. We've introduced more color. I think this one would be really good in the traditional as well if there were the decorated greenery up against the door. A lot of people underestimate the detail that holiday lighting can have. You usually look at it from a distance, but when you're, welcoming carolers at the front porch, those pine cones and those little details actually are pretty nice up close. So it's, for someone who's really a detailed person, decorating that greenery can be really nice too. All right, we're finally to the Halloween one that I wanted to show you. So this one, really hard to identify the distinct architectural highlights of this home, because they have highlighted all of it. They're running down the sides, which is a really cool effect at Halloween. Probably not something you would do during Christmas, but if you have someone who's an enthusiast for Halloween, it creates a really spooky effect. And that is the best application of architecture I've seen, because it's outlining the whole building, sides and everything. So architecture can definitely be played on for certain installations, certainly Halloween. This house kind of has a spooky aspect to it anyway. So, you know, the arch is being like a secondary door arch is being highlighted. That balcony is being highlighted, and you can't see it very well, but there's a big spider crawling up the porch. So the right use of color on those architectural features is really cool. Like, remember, it's like with like. So you've got your walls, the parts that are streaming down, the same color. You've got your roof line, the same color. You've got your balconies, the same color. Like colors highlighting like features is a powerful design. You would probably throw off the eye if the two balconies were different colors, if the columns that are running down the sides were all different colors. It wouldn't be as powerful and palatable and pleasing to the eye. The focal point, of course, becomes the doorways, and probably I think the left-hand doorway that has the more of the spooky purple arch, I think that's probably the main doorway. It would probably be the main focal point because the walkway leads all the way to it. But since it's trick-or-treater time, I'd imagine that the focal point is the door. This one is in the lookbook as well, which is cool. You've got it forever and you can show it. I think as far as design and as far as jobs that people do, I think Halloween is probably the understated opportunity because we're usually not prepared for it. So as you're working your calendar as a contractor and you're talking to your customers, especially during the summer months when you're working with them on other outdoor living solutions, remind them that Halloween's coming, and Halloween lighting is a really great place to start. With permanent lighting, it kind of solves the problem, right? You can just decorate for Halloween and you've got your lighting ready to transition from Halloween to Thanksgiving to Christmas. It's kind of always there. But for the right customer, the right enthusiast with the right budget, Halloween is a really fun time to decorate a house, and can be really quite the spectacle. So this one, lots of color, lots of C9. They're not spending all their money on C9 bulbs. They're also using C7, which is a good idea. You don't have to put all your money into really big, bright things. You can vary that a little bit. The effect is basically the same, a little brighter from the C9. Got the light stakes. It looks like the lookbook doesn't have that one tree. Actually, maybe it just has C7 in it because it's kind of a spooky effect. It's not a mini light, it's a C7, I think. On B, yeah, purple C7 bulbs are being used in the tree. And then they've got the green bulbs around the landscape paths. Any comments on this? This one always gets a lot of attention because it's such a cool design, and something that you probably could do for your customers if you plan ahead. Okay, I think we're going to run out of time here. Oops, I'm going to go back one. The last page of the lookbook, and hopefully you have this. This is just a look at the add-ons. So remember, there's always an opportunity to add on when you're selling and designing. So look at the backyard. This backyard was featured in that video that I showed. It'll show you the types of products that you can use in the backyard. It's primarily going to be trees, right? You're going to highlight different shrubs and trees that are visible from the inside. It's also an opportunity to look for a pool house or, you know, some kind of a pergola or something that might be in the backyard as an add-on. So make sure that you have access to that and know where the family spends their time, if they're in the family room or dining room or wherever their best vantage points are, and look for those. And they can be built over time. Also in the lookbook is just it's a one page, but it's a part of the end of the lookbook shows how to work with permanent lighting. Permanent lighting doesn't prevent you from doing seasonal accessorizing for sure. You've got the permanent lighting on the roof line, and this lookbook just shows that you've got the infinity lights on the roof line, but there is, you know, the same effort to go in and place those decorated garlands along the columns and the doors. And in this case, they use spheres, which is really cool. So be thinking about those customers that have permanent. It doesn't prevent you from designing. It's an opportunity to play off of the permanent and really accessorize and decorate just for the holidays, just for Halloween, or, you know, whatever holiday they want to bring some accessorizing into their installation.